Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Today we are going to be talking about Mercury retrograde in general. We are not going to be breaking it down for the 12 signs. However, we are going to be breaking that down on Friday. So I'm going to be coming back for a live on Friday, and I'm going to be shedding light on how you are going to be impacted by the upcoming Mercury retrograde. So let me just wait a little bit in case someone wants to join us. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I hope everyone is having a great week and you are ready for Mercury retrograde. Do let me know where you are watching me from. It's always good to see. Actually, I'm quite shocked that, we are all over the world, actually. Some people are from New Zealand, some are from Australia, US, Europe, and so forth. It's amazing. Hi, everyone. We are going to be starting the live in a couple of minutes. So maybe grab a coffee. We're going to be spending a good 45 minutes together. So I can tell you how this Mercury retrograde is playing out for many of us and what to pay attention to. Mercury retrograde is often very feared, right? And then we don't want to buy anything, we don't want to purchase, we don't want to talk to our ex partners and so forth. But I've been kind of like an advocate about Mercury retrograde. We have to forget all of those because that's not what Mercury retrograde is about. So I'm going to be giving you hints and tips of how to actually work with Mercury retrograde. Yes, I think if you press the notification bell, then it should be popping up that I'm going live. Absolutely. Someone is traveling. Enjoy your travel. Actually, I'm going to travel as well in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go to Bulgaria for a week or so. I'm going to be meeting Vlada and my really good friend of mine, Tsveti, as well. You guys might have seen Tsveti on my channel quite a few times. Mercury retrograde is not always about communication breakdowns, but I'm gonna talk about that. Mercury retrograde is basically a loop. Okay, so what it really does is that it connects 11-month period. Why is that? Because Mercury goes retrograde at on a particular degree. So this time around, it's going to be going retrograde around 26 degree of Cancer. Now, 11 months before, so we are talking sometimes last year, July, Mercury went direct around 26 degree of Cancer. So last year, the retrogression started in fire sign and it finished in water signs, okay? So that's the whole point about Mercury retrograde, okay? So this time around, it goes retrograde on 26 degree of Cancer. 11 months before, it went direct around 26 degree of Cancer. It's not always going to be the exact degree, okay? You can give up to about 3-4 degree difference, but basically it's going to be forming within 22-month period a Star of David configuration. Okay, so I think I held a webinar a couple of years ago about this, which goes really deep to understand why I believe Mercury is one of the planets that is connected to symbolism as well as talents. I think Mercury is often just underrated in our chart, and then we tend to be thinking about, oh yeah, it's communication and so forth. But Mercury indicates a lot more than that. Okay, so working with this Mercury retrograde, What is going to be happening is that firstly, think back what went down in your life 11 months before. So I want to give you a scenario. For example, let's say you bought it's a very funny story actually. A friend of mine bought a car approximately about 11 months before. So I think it was last year, July, on top of my head, during Mercury retrograde. And the wife is very into astrology. So she said that, hold on a minute, I don't think you should be buying this car. But my friend or the husband was absolutely keen to get that car. And then we kind of predicted that, okay, this car is going to get sold 11 months later. And then a couple of weeks ago, my friend told me that, Victor, you won't believe, as soon as Mercury went into the sign of Cancer, my husband started thinking about selling this car, started looking at dealership shops and so forth. But the husband remembers that that's what we said. So he was like, no, I'm just looking. I don't want to sell. But of course, the wife really knows her husband inside out. So she knows that he's thinking about that. Okay, so that's how you are connecting the loops with Mercury retrograde. Rather than just thinking about, oh, I'm not going to buy any electronic items and so forth. And you might be telling me, guys, that, yeah, Victor, but whenever I buy something during Mercury retrograde, it breaks down. You know why it breaks down? Because pop astrology, modern pop astrology, kind of implanted this into your brain, that if you buy something during Mercury retrograde, it's gonna break down. That's the only reason, but Mercury retrograde is really not about this. For example, let me tell you another story. I think it was a couple of years ago. I bought a property during Mercury retrograde. Guess what? Nothing happened to it. Okay. So that was actually one of the best properties I've ever bought. And then 11 months after, again, during Mercury retrograde period, I managed to sell it. But that was my intention. I used to do a lot of flipping. Okay. So that's, I buy a property, I do it up a little bit, I do renovations, nice furnitures and so forth, and then I resell it. So that's what I used to do before. I'm not doing it much anymore because anyway, it's a long story, so I don't want to get into that. So please forget about Mercury retrograde, and I'm not going to text my ex and all these type of things, because that's not what Mercury retrograde is about. So for example, if there were some health ramifications that time around, then yes, that health problem can be coming back into your life, or you might be finding resolution for it. So it highly depends on how that Mercury retrograde looks like, how your natal chart looks like. And by the way, let me mention that I still have got 30% discount on my readings if you would need a bit of a clarity. But let's get into this Mercury retrograde. I found something on this streaming device. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it, but there is a function for notes. So I'm just wondering, if I put notes in, are you guys going to be able to see it on the screen? So please do let me know. Can you guys see notes on the screen? Because I put notes on the screen. Yeah, I'm really trying to figure out how this streaming device work. I don't think you might be able to see the notes because I'm not seeing anything, but maybe it's just me. Okay, but anyway, let me give you the dates. Okay, so 1st June 1st, Mercury entered the sign of Cancer. 13th of June, Mercury entered its shadow period. 29th of June, Mercury stations retrograde, and it's going to be happening on 26th degree of Cancer. On 13th of July, Sun will make a conjunction to Mercury. A Sun-Mercury conjunction is always the midway of the retrogradation, and the conjunction is going to take place on 20 degree of Cancer. 23rd of July, Mercury is going to station direct on 16 degree of Cancer. Okay, so that's where the shadow period starts. It starts between 16 degree of Cancer, and then it finishes once it goes back to the 26 degree of Cancer. which is going to be happening on 7th of August. That's when Mercury is going to leave the shadow zone. And then 9th of August, Mercury is going to move into Leo. So these are the dates, these are the degrees that you might want to note down. 20 degree of Cancer, 26 degree of Cancer, and 16 degree of Cancer. If you have got any planets, or particularly on those any planets, plus minus 1 degree, okay? Be very tight with it. Plus minus 1 degree in the cardinal signs, such as Cancer, Aries, Libra, or Capricorn, then this Mercury retrograde is going to be impacting you significantly. Do not just look at your natal chart, but also look at your progress chart, solar arc chart as well. I would really give just 1 degree off. You might be wondering why. The reason why, because whenever a planet goes retrograde on a particular degree, it means it kind of stops there. Okay, Mercury stops there only for a couple of days, really. But for example, if Pluto went retrograde on 5 degree of Aquarius, Pluto is going to be on that 5 degree for a long time. It could be up to a month or so as well. So therefore, it would affect you even further. Oh, sorry about that. So let's talk about this Mercury retrograde a little bit. So, June 1st, Mercury went into the sign of Cancer, right? So our thoughts and conversations kind of shifted potentially towards home, family, real estate, emotional security, or you might have started talking about the past. June 13th, Mercury entered its shadow zone on 16 degree of Cancer. That could be, for example, an initial argument, maybe a lingering family theme, a domestic issue that might require re-evaluation during the retrograde period. So you might want to go back to the June 13th and kind of think through what went down. So on June 29th, Mercury stations retrograde on 26 degree of Cancer. So that's kind of like the formal slowdown begins, right? So miscommunications based on taking things too personally could be peaking. For example, the logistics regarding home or family require a second look. And then July 13th, when we have got the Sun conjunction to Mercury on 20 degree of Cancer, that's what we call as cosimi. Okay, that's a moment of clarity. That's a moment of insight, a breakthrough conversation, potentially regarding those family matters or property matters. And then July 23rd, when Mercury stations direct, this is when there is a bit of a forward momentum. Things are going to start slowly returning back to normal. The details are kind of like still a little bit, maybe confusing, or they have to be sorted out, but maybe you are making an internal decisions. And then August 7th, that's when Mercury leaves the shadow zone. So the final resolution of the themes, conversations, the logistics that began in mid-June is kind of like getting sorted out. So for example, would you sign a contract during Mercury retrograde? For example, if you are selling a property. I would, because it's going to take 2 months for the property to go through anyway. So I don't think you are making it extremely difficult. Yes, maybe you are making it slightly bit more difficult, and we're going to have to revisit the documentations and so forth. But in most countries, a ownership change takes approximately about 2 months, right? So let me give you kind of like a couple of examples that I can imagine with this Mercury retrograde through Cancer. Remember, by the way, that Mercury retrogrades are happening in water signs this year. Okay, so we had one in Pisces, now in Cancer. The next one is going to be in Scorpio. And actually, on a yearly basis, they are forming a grand trine. Okay, so that's why it is always about opportunity to restore something that you are going to be benefiting from. Retrograde means reflection, revisiting, reviewing something. Any words that comes with the prefix re is very retrograde type of indications, okay? So let's imagine that you are buying or selling or repairing a home during this window. So this could indicate, for example, a certain type of hidden issues in plumbing or the foundation. might come to light, and you have to be dealing with those properties, especially after June 13th. Okay, and maybe this is going to slow down that sales, or the buyer might experience a change of heart, for example, maybe certain type due to certain type of like emotional discomfort, not necessarily because of finances, but yes, it could indicate change of heart. So what would be the fix there? That's the most important. You have to be rechecking the home security systems. You have to be looking at your insurance policies. You have to be finishing, any type of DIY projects rather than, maybe starting a massive new renovations, especially if 11 months before you have experienced certain type of issues with your property. Okay, but Cancer represents the past as well. Cancer represents nostalgia, family roots. So maybe an old friend of yours, because Cancer can also represent the inner circle, or a childhood friend of yours might be popping back into your life, or you just go down on a memory lane and then you start looking at old photos. And maybe if it's in your sixth house, you're going to be like, oh, I used to be so skinny and I would like to go back there. Okay, so Cancer was past and memories. So this type of transit often triggers old family dynamics or childhood patterns that require closure, a bit of a healing as well. And maybe you are just ending up jumping into your car and then kind of like going to your old town or the old family home, and maybe someone else is living there, so you're not going to be able to go in, but you just kind of want to see how the home looks like, and so forth. I think it's a very good period of time to process all emotional clutter. I think it's an excellent transit for kind of therapy or journaling, especially if you had a bit of an emotional turmoil happening in your life. Imagine that you have got Mars, Pluto, or Saturn, for example, in your fourth house, maybe in the sign of Cancer. Well, Pluto is not going to be in the sign of Cancer, surely. But anyway, then it's a good time for you to go through those issues and how I can have a peaceful closure. Okay. Um, or maybe, it's a little bit of a poor time actually to assume that a toxic family kind of dynamic has completely, changed overnight. All of a sudden, everyone is nice to me and so forth. Then this could indicate that your hopes are too like hyped up a little bit, and then unfortunately the issue can return to you, for example, 11 months later. But maybe, often actually I can imagine as well that people are not necessarily listening to the literal words being said, and maybe they are responding just to the tone or how those words are kind of like make them feel. So therefore, it can indicate certain type of misunderstandings, especially why? Because Mercury is Mercury is the dispositor of Uranus and Mars as well. And remember, we spoke about that yesterday and the day before yesterday. Mars and Uranus are making a conjunction on 3rd or 4th of July, but Mars enters the sign of Gemini on the very same day when Mercury goes retrograde. So therefore, you need to be super careful with your words because it can really indicate arguments. We are going to be saying something that might need more explanation later on, or we're going to have to apologize for it. Now, imagine if you are a Leo rising sign, for example, or you have got Pluto on your ascendant, or your Sun on the ascendant, or even Aries rising sign and stuff like that. Often the pride gets in the way, and it's a little bit more difficult to apologize for something. Okay, now Mercury is the planet of intellect, perception, the daily logistics as well. So retrograding through Cancer, I think the objective mind is a little bit submerged with like in emotional waters, really. So this transit sometimes strips away the dry logic and kind of forces you to rely on your gut feelings a little bit more. But there is something RuPaul usually say, and I love that saying. um, whatever others are saying is none of my business. That's one of the sayings I love from him. The other one is that whatever your inner saboteur is telling you is is basically a piece of crap. So we're gonna have to be aware of these. And I feel like Mercury in Cancer also reminds us of that too, you know? Uh, because it is very easy with Mercury in the sign of Cancer to have kind of like thoughts that are colored by your mood. So we can go down really on a depressive kind of, we can go into that depressive state as well. You know, if Mercury is the information, you know, the information is absorbed through kind of like emotional osmosis. It's not necessarily an intellectually analytical type of Mercury. So imagine that if the environment or the conversation feels unsafe, the mind kind of shuts down a little bit. It goes on a defensive mode. And regardless of how kind of logical the argument is, because Cancer's ultimate meaning is about safety and security. Let me see what you guys are saying. So Sun is at 15-degree Cancer. It's a wild year ahead, that's for sure. Good thing is going back to school for my PhD. Oh, congratulations. Also doing a lot of therapy work and spiritual retreats. I love that. Hello, Ashley. Good to have you here. Is Mercury retrograde now? It is about to start in 5 days. You know, you might end up talking about the past even more. You can be bringing up past issues, for example. And this is where I think it's important to mention that, you know, what's the point of talking about the past? Sometimes we're just going to have to let go of that. I know it's extremely difficult. Or maybe it's actually super important to talk about the past because that potentially brings us mental clarity. That might be bringing us a peace of mind as well. But imagine this as a mental type player kind of rewinds all the time. And then we can't stop thinking about something like unresolved grievances. You know, it's like the nostalgia to the tip of the tongue. And then I keep wanting to talk about that. You know, long buried conversations. We might be going back to our, I don't know, love letters, for example, if it's in the 5th house, unspoken childhood resentments, and so on. So often people kind of find themselves reminiscing during a Mercury retrograde in Cancer period. Maybe you're trying to make sense of messages that, I don't know, your ex-boyfriend sent to you 11 months ago. But the reason why we do that is because we are trying to rewrite the narratives of the past to kind of find closure. Or maybe I can imagine that the concept of home is going to get evaluated in your life. And I'm talking about both the literal, kind of like the physical structure, the safety, the plumbing, the real estate, and the psychological meaning of the home as well. Where do I actually belong? Who is my true family? Do I feel outcasted? And so forth. So if we are doing a bit of a physical home, that's where maybe there could be a bit of a misunderstanding, for example, with a contractor, especially if it happens in your 6th house, or there could be an old leak in the basement that might be re-emerging because maybe 11 months ago you tried to be a little bit, you know, like, what's the right word I'm looking for? I don't want to use cheap, but maybe you wanted to use, you know, like a cheaper material and therefore it can come back to you. So it's again forcing a cleanup somehow of that, even of that hidden moisture, you know, from a symbolic point of view, but that literal one as well. Especially, let's say, if it happens in your 2nd house. So now, like I said, Often Mercury retrograde in Cancer is not only about the memory, but it is a little bit about regrets as well. Like, it's like often this combination is going to say, I shouldn't have said that. I should have just done something completely different. What's the point in crying over the spilled milk, right? We can start revisiting past mistakes, missed opportunities, poorly chosen words. And then it's like you are digesting yourself from inside out. Cancer is kind of like something, it's like a container. It holds on to things. So it's like a mental filing cabinet here with Mercury. And then you are trying to kind of like look through the pages where I made certain type of mistakes. So don't get stuck in the past. That's one of the messages I would like to give you today. It's also about like, oh, it used to be like that. And we are wishing to go back to those times. The major question here is, how are you going to bring those times back into your life rather than just wishing it to be happening that way? Because just wishing for it is not going to bring those old times back to you. So, and this is, I think, where the Mars and Uranus conjunction also could be playing a very significant role. Because Mars and Uranus is about a liberating action. Yes, we have to be careful. The action has to be calculated, but like we discussed in the last couple of days with with Mars and Uranus, we're gonna have to go after something that is our own desire. We're gonna have to talk about something that is a little bit uncomfortable for us, in a certain way. Okay. So that Mars Uranus is highly volatile, it's impatient, it's disruptive, it's kind of verbally aggressive. And I think the impact on Mercury retrograde is that it can create something sharp, sudden, or even reckless communication breaks because of a certain emotional fog. Maybe it's about having a very simple kind of like conversation, but that could be exploding because the mind is kind of like stewing over the past regrets, old family dynamics, and so forth. And the Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini creates that itch for an unfiltered speech, to kind of feel like that I want to be speaking my truth. And that's where the arguments are going to. Um, that's where this could be feeding right back into that Cancerian retrograde trap. Okay. So, but also you might be getting to know a piece of information, Gemini, about your own past. And it kind of comes to you like a lightning bolt, of data or news or text message and so forth. And this might be a message that concerns a member of your family, a past event, a piece of history, a domestic matter, and so forth. And of course, this might be forcing an immediate kind of like re-evaluation of what went down, let's say 11 months ago, 22 months ago, 33 months ago, and so forth. And then you are like, how did I not see that before? How did I miss the details? So it can lead to certain type of like, you are beating yourself up for not being able to see it. Now, what also happens is, is there a way to share the chart? I want to kind of look at it. I'm sure I can share the chart. Okay, I have to figure it out for next time. Yes, I think rewriting the past. I really agree with that, Ashley. So this retrograde is in your third house. I have some writing projects on the go, and I'm in the middle of writing competition. Is the third house in charge of writing? Yes, and also the fifth house as well. When you have a minute, could you please tell us about your level 3 master yearly access? You have a discount there. Yes, so it is including approximately about 222 courses and webinars, and you can watch them as many times as you wish for a year. So there is no limitation on that. I am holding 2 or 3 webinars each month. It includes lunation reports as well, which I do twice a month live, but only for the members. And there is a learning path available on my website as well if you are a beginner, so that it's going to be suggesting to you what is the next step to take if you want to master astrology better. Each live sessions 3 times or 2 times a month, usually it's free by the way, is going to be approximately about 75 to 90 minutes long. And there are 2 courses happening right now, which is included in level 3 membership. One is relocation, and the other one is yearly predictive techniques. So that's about a 55 to 60 week course. And I teach you all the tiny techniques in the world connected to Western astrology, not Vedic. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So approximately 200 and all future webinars and future courses are included as well. The ones that are astrology related, okay? So for example, if I did a tarot course, that is not included, but anything astrological, I'm not going to be doing a tarot course, by the way, I just gave an example, okay? So yeah, that's how it works. Oh, thank you. This is an old one, and I never liked wearing it, but for some reason I was in the mood of wearing it today. Okay, so anyway, next time I figure out how to share the chart. But what I was going to say is that when you look at, well, we still have to figure out how to. Give me a moment. I'm going to ask my admin how to share the screen. He's also online here, and then he's telling me what to do. So let me just read the message. Give me a second, please. And then we are going to be sharing that screen no matter what. Because I want to show you how the chart looks like. Yeah, okay, I know how to share it now. I have been shown. So just a second. And then we are going to be good to go. Yes, so this is where we share the screen, and this is it. So can someone tell me in the chat box if you can see the screen? I think I can see it on this. I can see it as far as I'm seeing it. So can someone tell me, please, if you can see the screen? I'm gonna just wait a second. If anyone is able to just drop in the chat box that you can see it, then I'm ready to go. Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much. So it's not the exact date, okay? So I'm not going to be changing the date, but you can see that Mercury is right on, now it's on 25 degrees because I haven't changed the date, but it is making a conjunction to Jupiter. So if it's a conversation that we are meant to be having, for example, with family members, what it is telling you that it's an important one. It's a big message that you are going to be receiving. If you are having an argument, for example, with your neighbor, Uranus-Mars conjunction in Gemini, that would be telling you that this is going to be quite a big one. So whatever Jupiter does in our chart, it always magnifies it, right? So it's always going to be kind of like blowing something out of the ballpark. But of course, Jupiter, what's very interesting about a Mercury and Jupiter conjunction is that 2 things, what is very interesting about it. Jupiter is direct, And Mercury is trying to catch up with Jupiter, but it decides to turn around because it's never going to reach Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, right? So it's like I'm trying to speak to a guru, for example, but unfortunately, let's say the guru is unavailable. So when it comes to these healing conversations, it looks like that you are trying to kind of like open up to an opportunity, but someone just doesn't listen. Jupiter is not listening here. Jupiter decides to move into the sign of Leo. Jupiter is talking to a different sign. So Mercury feels like that, here you go again. Exactly the same thing happened that went down, for example, 11 months ago. So what's the point in me trying? So if it's a memory loop, it's going to be quite a amplified memory loop with this as well. Think of Jupiter as a megaphone, okay? So it takes that internal kind of regret or and then it's going to get blown out of the proportion, basically. So because Jupiter is on 29 degrees, something is connected to crisis as well. It's a bit of a frantic pressure to fix a past situation. It can feel like that if I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. And therefore, it feels like with the Uranus and Mars conjunction at the same time, there's a lot of nervous type of energy around this Mercury retrograde. It also feels like it's a bit of an emotional spillover. Like I said, Cancer keeps things protected inside its shell, but then the 29 degree represents somehow a breaking point. Something spills over there. My emotions, whatever I have to say, whatever I'm feeling, I cannot hold it inside anymore. So it's a now or never type of family confrontation. It's a now or never property purchase or relocation and so forth. It's kind of like a final decision. It surely is about closure. So that's all about Jupiter for now. Remember, we are going to be talking about Saturday, Jupiter moving into the sign of Leo. So that's going to be our weekend project. But what's also important to mention is that Mercury is in the sign of Cancer, right? It's going to be going retrograde on 26 degrees. It's squaring Aries in the sign of Aries. Aries is the asteroid of discord, the asteroid of kind of like tense energies. It's a whisperer who is kind of like telling we can call it as a demonic energy, who is telling you, you know what, you have to be telling them what you feel like and be brutal about it. Let's just kind of cause chaos there. Aries was a feminine warrior type of energy. She was outcasted. Sorry. She was refused an entry to the wedding party. That's why she felt outcasted. And she was like, okay, if you guys don't think that I'm allowed to be at this wedding party, let me cause a huge kind of like issue for you. So it feels like that another indication of something big is happening with this Mercury retrograde. I think the urge of Aries is in the sign of Aries is honesty. It is an autonomous defiance. It is a zero compromise. So whatever I have to talk about, let's say with the family members and so forth, it feels like we are going to be very brutal about it. Aries doesn't care about comfort. Aries doesn't care about how you feel about things. What it cares about is fairness, unfair treatment. You treated me badly. So you know what? You have to be paying for the consequences. So that's the Aries energy. Also, I'm kind of feeling like, because, if it's about you regretting a past action, then that inner demon is kind of like firing you up on that. So again, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that, I hurt other people's feelings, I shouldn't have caused trouble, I was a bad mom, I was a bad child, I should have taken a better care of my kids and so forth. Again, this is a kind of like a mental loop. Because Aries was outcasted, it represents certain type of pain as well. So this is another indication that it would be a painful conversation. And I'm also wondering if it's somehow connected to 2018 onwards. Well, let me explain why, but I feel like some of you will confirm that, yeah, we did have something down in 2018. Well, I'm also connecting it to Chiron as well. So that's another thing to kind of think about it. Now, who is the dispositor of Mercury? That's the moon. Okay, so I actually have to change the screen because then you won't see the dispositor. So sorry about that. Oh, what have I done? So I'm going to be changing the screen. Yeah, I'm going to share it back. Window, share. So you guys should be able to see it, but now I don't see things. Okay, got it now. So you can see that moon is in the sign of Capricorn. And what's also mega important is that we are actually experiencing. Can you guys hear me? Because it said we have lost connection. I'm just gonna give a second for someone to confirm that you can hear me well. Hello. Can you hear me? If anyone would be nice to let me know that you can hear me, that would be much appreciated. Okay, so you can hear me. Brilliant. So I was talking about Mercury is being disposed by the moon. And the moon is in the sign of Capricorn. And then when you look at the opposing sign, Cancer, you can see actually we are experiencing a full moon. So a full moon is something that exposes issues. Secondly, the full moon is an absolute peak. It's an illumination. It is dramatic also. During full moons, it is actually recorded that more crazy people go on the streets. So therefore, another indication that whatever conversation is going to go down, that's going to be somehow super important and it's going to blown out of the ballpark. So you just have to stay grounded. The moon in Capricorn represents structural reality, duty, rules, external authorities, while the opposite to it, Sun is in the sign of Cancer, and then Mercury, and then Jupiter, representing that raw, kind of like emotional side of things, the private life. So it feels like then it feels like that raw, like for example, you go to a bank and then you feel like, because Capricorn represents banking industries, you feel like that the person is talking you out of something or looking down on you, or it could be also a parental figure as well, and then you can get tired of that. So I'm also, because moon is in the sign of Capricorn, it is trying to anchor you. This full moon like anchoring you, from that explosion that Mars and Uranus conjunction is creating, the Mercury retrograde is creating. It is reminding you that there are rules of how we have to be acting, how we have to be kind of like sharing our opinions with others. Or you might be tired of these rules that your parents are kind of like restricting you, your partner is restricting you, and so forth. So again, the example that comes to my mind is that you might be dealing with certain type of domestic crisis situations that require an immediate but empathetic kind of like flexibility, and maybe the boss is not compassionate enough, Capricorn, and then they are telling you that no, you cannot go home, or you are sick again, or your child is sick again. And then you are like, I'm really sorry, but why are you talking to me that way? I haven't been sick for a year. So I'm trying to defend myself. Okay. So this could be a government agency. This could be about a contractual agreement. And this is leading to an outburst. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to be doing the live session on the full moon, but that is only available for my Patreons, for my members on my website. But in case you are interested, feel free to join, or you can join on YouTube as well within the YouTube membership, if that's the only thing that you want and you don't want to study about that. Okay. And also, I'm wondering if it represents certain type of regrets over, like, about over-regulating yourself, because Capricorn moon is about conditioning. So, and we have discussed that Mercury is going into this mental loop. So, like, why did I let myself be restricted for such a long time? Why did I follow other people's rules at the expense of my own emotional safety and security, or even sanity? So that could be also something to remember. The other thing that you won't see on the chart, but Hygeia is making a conjunction to Mercury as well. Hygeia is about preservation. So when it makes a conjunction to Mercury, it says that we have to have mental preservation going on. It's the conjunction of mental sanity. Hygeia is also medical, very psychological. It gives a bit of a diagnostical kind of layer to this Mercury. So I'm trying to diagnose my physical well-being, my psychological levels, and so forth. She's the goddess of health, but more to do with sanitization, more to do with kind of cleanliness. Like, hygiene is like, why do I have to brush my teeth? Okay, or why do I have to wash my hands every 30 minutes? So it's the asteroid of prevention of medical matters, something that later on can cause sickness, basically. So you might be reevaluating all these topics as well, but it kind of, I would call it as the clinical audit of your past. Rather than you're going to be thinking about, I should be washing my hands more often. Of course, that could be also a topic there as well. Imagine Cancer as the house, Hygeia is cleanliness, and Mercury. So it's like, I'm thinking about the clean house of the psyche. I'm thinking about, you know, uh, I don't know, maybe you can experience, like, in your holiday home, you are seeing ants or cockroaches, and then you decide to call that sanitization company. I can even imagine such scenario. Okay, so Hygeia being there, and then the other planetary energy that we have got two more asteroids involved here. One of them is Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is the goddess of love. Often Venus is called as Aphrodite as well, but there is a slight difference going on between Venus and Aphrodite. And then we've got another asteroid involved here, Aurora. So Aphrodite is sitting on 26 degree, Aurora is sitting on 25 degree of Cancer. Now, who is Aurora? Let's start with that. Aurora represents the dawn, fresh start. Aurora is named after the Roman goddess of the dawn who flies across the sky to announce the arrival of the sun. So she's a bit of a messenger. That's why she's the representation of the dawn. So she represents new beginnings, fresh awakenings, clarity that comes after a long kind of like dark, like night or sleep. So this could really indicate that you wake up one morning and then you feel this urge that I need a fresh start. And therefore, I need to relocate, for example. I need to have that conversation with people I share a roof with, and so forth. So when Aurora conjuncts Mercury, that memory loop that we have spoken about is you want to go back to the past to revisit the past because you need mental clarity, you need closure, so that you, because you might feel like that without that I'm never going to be able to restart, I'm never going to be able to start fresh. And then asteroid Aphrodite represents um, that impulsive desire. While Venus represents, relating or harmony or the way we fall in love or the way we kind of want to be treated, Aphrodite represents the attraction itself. It's the impulses, it's the vanity. Aphrodite, if you ever watched Xena, the warrior princess, Aphrodite appeared in Xena series quite often, and she's depicted there quite well. I mean, do you let me know? Do you watch? Because I just started rewatching Xena, the warrior princess. That's one of my favorite TV shows ever, because I love Greek mythology, and it is actually portraying the Greek mythology really, really well. And Aphrodite was always beautifully dressed up, and she was seductive. She wanted everyone to love her, and so forth. So that's pretty much the romantic impulses, the vanity, the purely electric, bit of a fickle desire there as well, right? So when Aphrodite is also there, it kind of represents temptation to view the past relationships, for example, but through very idealized, kind of like a beautiful Snapchat filter, and therefore this Mercury retrograde can indicate such things, that you want your ex-boyfriend to come back. You are going down on that memory lane that, oh, you know what, it was so great. It was way better than, for example, I don't know, with my other boyfriend or my current boyfriend or something like that. So that's the Aphrodite element there. So, like you see, guys, this is a very interesting full moon overall. Sorry, not full moon, Mercury retrograde period. These are the major aspects that are happening. Potentially, some might be talking about, a Chiron square as well. But me personally, I don't work together with out of sign aspects, okay? Unless I see something in the dispositor chain, which means that, let's say, moon rules all the Cancerian energies, and then the moon rules Saturn, for example, and the full moon is in square to Saturn. But I didn't want to talk about that today, because then what am I going to talk about tomorrow for my Patreons connected to this T-square that is happening between the full moon and Saturn? So that's going to be another storyline there. So do you let me know, guys, if we have got any questions on this Mercury retrograde? Or, okay, so I'm not too sure now what is happening, why my face is so small. Okay, I have no idea. Anyway, we have got this black screen happening, and I see my face just somewhere. Okay, anyway. Yeah, that's what happens when you are not tech savvy. Many Aquarius are believed to be tech savvy, but my research shows otherwise. Uranian people are very tech savvy, surely, but the Aquarius people are not always, unless if it's on the 11th house cusp or the 3rd house cusp or even on the 10th house cusp. But an Aquarius sun or rising sign is rarely tech savvy. When all his charts are highlighting your natal vertex, I'm not too sure if I understand that. You mean everything right now is kind of like triggering your natal vertex. Vertex often is a turmoil, actually. Vertex is very active whenever there is earthquakes, floods, kind of like natural disasters in the mundane world. So vertex, when it gets activated in our chart, it's not just about karmic relationships. It could be that, because that's one of the most popular meaning of vertex, but often it is a turning point in our life or lives. Hi from Prague. Hi. One of your favorite shows as well. Yes, I only have got 1 to 4, and the 5th and the 6th season is missing. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I have to be finding that. Yes, always talk about asteroids. I'm guessing I'm one of those rare channels where whatever I break down, whether it's a full moon or a new moon or other stuff as well, I always look up the asteroids and I try to integrate that. They are not overriding the meaning of the major planetary energies, but I think they are giving extra nuances of the stories, kind of like certain type of clarification. Okay. So does anyone have a question at all? Will violence calm down between USA and Iran? My prediction was that not until at least 2029, the first quarter of the year. So I made that prediction approximately, a good 6 months ago or so. I also predicted, I believe, that for April, May, things would slow down a little bit and then problems would start catching up again. So it's an on and off type of relationship that I'm seeing between those two countries. I always look at dwarfs as well. In most of, definitely with the new moons, like with the Uranus-Mars conjunction. Yesterday I spoke about that it is falling onto Cancerian dwarfs. So I do look at them as well. So this Mercury retrograde currently is happening on Pisces, it is Taurus dwarfs. So it's happening on Taurus dwarfs. So you can be having conversations about finances as well with family members or in your inner tribe, someone is owing you money and so forth. Or you might be thinking about even further financial matters of how, like, both Taurus and Cancer is about security. One is an emotional security, the other one is more of a material security. So you can feel worried about material security, or you feel like that I have to be pushing harder in order for me to emotionally get in, kind of get healthier with money, or you have to be looking at whether you are like an emotional spender or you are emotionally a holder. And then I kind of have to stop doing that. Because remember, this combination is a little bit about emotional clutter and its clearance. Okay. So, if this Mercury retrograde applies but does not perfect someone's natal IC in general, what would you expect, as it would square the AC descendant? So, one important thing to mention is that, and this is the reason why when I do breakdowns for other signs, then what I usually say is not only listen to your rising sign, for example, but listen to the opposing sign as well. But you can actually listen to the same element, like not the same element, sorry, the same modalities. So you can be listening to all the cardinal signs. What I'm trying to say there is that if, let's say, if it happens in your first house, it might be showing up in your 7th house or 4th house or the 10th house as well, because those are creating kind of like this cross quadrant. And so therefore, if it's triggering, it doesn't necessarily trigger your IC, but I'm guessing maybe it's close by or it's square in it, but maybe not on those exact degrees that I told you. It could still bring up a certain type of past memories, family issues, but you might not feel it as important to kind of go and revisit those topics. If a family member owes me money, can it return on this retro? Yes. So that could be, for example, a meaning of that. Good. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining. I hope it was useful. On Friday, we are going to be breaking this down for all 12 signs. So I hope to see you on Friday. So I'm guessing that's going to be a couple of hours live by the time I go through all 12 signs. Have a lovely week. Thank you very much.